Have you ever wondered how a simple act of kindness can change your life forever? Imagine working hard every day, just trying to make ends meet, and then, out of nowhere, a decision you made with nothing but good intentions sets off a chain of events you could have never predicted. That's exactly what happened to a waitress named Emma, who thought she was just helping out a family in need. Little did she know, her small gesture was about to turn her world upside down. It all started on an ordinary day. The restaurant was bustling with customers, the clinking of silverware, and soft murmur of conversations filling the air. Emma had been working there for a few years now, long enough to know the regulars and the usual routine. But that day, something felt a little different. At one of the corner tables sat a family, a tired mother, a father who looked like he'd been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, and two young children who were too well behaved for their age, quietly eating what they could. Emma couldn't help but notice the way the parents exchanged glances, the way they lingered over the menu, as if trying to make every dollar count. As she walked over to refill their drinks, she overheard bits of their conversation. They were clearly struggling, talking about bills, rent, and how hard it was to make things work. The kids, oblivious to the adults' worries, smiled at Emma as she filled their glasses, and that smile did something to her heart. When it was time for them to pay, the mother fumbled through her purse, and Emma could see the hesitation in her eyes. That's when Emma made a decision. Without thinking twice, she quietly slipped away, went to the register, and paid for the family's meal with her own tips. She never said a word to them. She simply smiled as they left, the parents giving her a small nod, gratitude shining in their tired eyes. To Emma, it wasn't a big deal. She knew what it was like to struggle. She had been there herself, scraping by day to day, wondering how she'd make rent at the end of the month. So, she paid it forward, never expecting anything in return. But what she didn't know was that her kindness didn't go unnoticed. A few days later, the door to the restaurant swung open, and in walked a man who radiated confidence. He wasn't a regular, at least not one Emma had seen before. He was sharply dressed, with a presence that instantly commanded attention. Emma, not thinking much of it, went about her usual routine. But when she approached his table, he greeted her with a knowing smile, one that made her pause for just a second. As the meal went on, the man asked Emma about her life, her job, and what drove her to be so kind to strangers. His questions were thoughtful, and though she didn't know why, she found herself opening up to him. She told him about her struggles, how she worked long hours to support herself, and how she always believed that a little kindness could go a long way. What she didn't know was that this man wasn't just any customer. He was the CEO of a major company, and he had heard about what she did for that family. As it turns out, that family was connected to him in a way Emma could never have imagined. And now, he was sitting in front of her, with an offer that would change her life forever. But what exactly did this CEO want with Emma? What could he possibly offer that would turn her world upside down in the best way possible? Stay tuned to find out. You won't believe what happens next. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about this man, but she had no idea just how different things were about to become. After he finished his meal, the CEO, whose name, as she would soon learn, was Mr. Andrews, asked Emma if they could speak privately for a moment. A little confused and maybe a bit nervous, Emma agreed, thinking it might be a simple chat or maybe some feedback about the service. But the moment they sat down, she realized this was far from an ordinary conversation. Mr. Andrews began by thanking her for the kindness she'd shown to the family earlier that week. He explained that the family she helped was going through one of the toughest times of their lives. The father had recently lost his job, and the mother was juggling 2 part-time gigs just to keep a roof over their heads. They were on the verge of losing everything. Emma listened intently, her heart sinking as she heard just how much they were struggling. But Mr. Andrews wasn't done. What Emma didn't know was that the father had once worked for Mr. Andrews's company. He had been a dedicated employee, always giving his all, until a series of unfortunate events turned his life upside down. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't keep up, and eventually he was let go. The family was too proud to ask for help, and they had been trying to get by on their own. That night at the restaurant was one of their lowest points. They were deciding whether they could afford to buy dinner for their kids or skip the meal entirely. Emma was stunned. She remembered how they had looked at each other, the quiet desperation in their eyes, and she felt a rush of emotions. She had been there before, in her own way. She knew what it was like to feel like you were doing everything you could, but it still wasn't enough. And now, here she was, face to face with the CEO of a major company, wondering why he was telling her all this. Mr. Andrews smiled at Emma, sensing her confusion. "You did something remarkable," he said. "In a world where so many people walk by without noticing, you stopped and took action. You didn't know that family's story, but you helped them anyway. And that, Emma, is something we don't see enough of." Emma blushed, unsure of how to respond. To her, it was just a small gesture, something anyone with a heart would have done. But Mr. Andrews saw it differently. He saw it as a sign of something greater. He explained that his company was always looking for people who understood the value, empathy, people who could see beyond their own struggles and extend a hand to others. And that's when he made an offer that left Emma speechless. Mr. Andrews wanted to offer her a position at his company, a job that would not only change her financial situation, but also give her a chance to make a real impact. He talked about how the company was launching a new initiative focused on community outreach and support, and how they needed someone like Emma, someone who understood what it meant to care for others. It wasn't just a job, it was an opportunity to help people like that struggling family, to make sure no one else had to face the same hardships alone. Emma couldn't believe what she was hearing. A part of her wanted to jump at the chance, to escape the long hours and low pay of waitressing, but another part of her was terrified. Could she really step into such a big role? Could she leave behind the life she had known for so long and embrace something new? As Mr. Andrews laid out the details of the offer, Emma's mind raced with possibilities, but also doubts. And then, as if sensing her hesitation, Mr. Andrews said something that made everything click. "You see, Emma, sometimes life gives us opportunities in the most unexpected ways. You weren't looking for a reward when you helped that family. You did it because it was the right thing to do. But sometimes, doing the right thing brings us to places we never thought possible." That's when Emma knew this was her moment. All the struggles, the late nights, the days when she didn't know how she would make it to the next, all of it had led her here. But even as she felt the weight of the decision pressing on her, another thought crept into her mind. If she took this job, what would happen to the family? She had helped them once, but would they be okay? Could she make sure they got back on their feet? The conflict gnawed at her. She wanted to accept the job, to build a new life for herself, but she also couldn't forget the family who had brought her to this point. As Mr. Andrews waited for her response, Emma felt torn between two paths, one leading to a brighter future for herself, and the other focused on the people she had already helped. What would she choose? Would she take the leap of faith and trust that everything would work out, or would her loyalty to the family hold her back? The tension in the air was palpable, and Emma knew that whatever decision she made would change her life forever. And just when she thought she had made up her mind, Mr. Andrews said one more thing that threw everything into chaos, leaving Emma standing at a crossroads she never expected. What could he have said? What new twist was waiting just around the corner? Stay tuned to find out what happens next, as Emma faces the toughest decision of her life. You won't want to miss what comes next. Just as Emma thought she was ready to make a decision, Mr. Andrews leaned forward slightly, his tone becoming more serious. "There's something else I should tell you," he said, his voice low and steady. Emma's heart skipped a beat. What could possibly be left to say? She had already been offered the job of a lifetime. But his next words would change everything. "The family you helped," Mr. Andrews continued, "they've been offered assistance in other ways too. We've arranged for the father to get back on his feet. His job reinstated even. We're providing support to get them through this difficult time. They won't need your help anymore, Emma. I'm sure they're grateful, but they're going to be okay now." Emma's heart fluttered. It was the moment she'd been hoping for, knowing that her act of kindness had really made a difference, that it wasn't just a fleeting moment, but something that had truly turned their lives around. And yet, as the weight of Mr. Andrews's words settled, another thought crept into her mind. If the family was getting help, then what was left for her? Her own future suddenly felt more uncertain than ever. The job offer, so tempting at first, now felt like a distant dream. She had done the right thing, and it had worked out for them, but now it was her time to focus on herself. But Mr. Andrews wasn't done yet. "You've made a real difference, Emma, and I think you should know that this job offer isn't just about money or status. It's about the impact you can have on others. What I see in you isn't just a waitress who gave up her tips to help a family. I see someone who is a natural leader, someone who can make real change. That's why I believe you're the perfect fit for this role." Emma sat in silence, her mind racing. She had expected to feel relief, maybe even pride, at knowing she had helped so many. But what she hadn't expected was the heavy responsibility that came with it. Could she really step into a role that would require so much from her? Could she live up to the expectations that Mr. Andrews had so clearly placed on her shoulders? She looked at him, taking in his words, and for the first time, she realized something important. It wasn't about the money or the job title. It was about the chance to make a real impact. She had already done it once, with a small act of kindness. What if she could keep doing that, but on a much larger scale? Emma took a deep breath and, with a steady voice, made her decision. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll take the job." Mr. Andrews smiled, his eyes gleaming with pride. "I knew you would. You've got the heart for this, Emma. That's what counts." In the days that followed, everything changed for Emma. She left her job at the restaurant and stepped into her new role with the company. The work wasn't easy, but it was meaningful. She traveled to different communities, helping families just like the one she had met in the restaurant. She was involved in initiatives that made a real difference, from providing financial education to those who needed it most, to helping them get the resources they needed to turn their lives around. As for the family she had helped, they thrived. The father went back to work, his self-esteem restored, and the family found stability again. Emma kept in touch with them, always grateful that she could be the spark that ignited their journey toward a better life. In the months that followed, Emma realized something important. Her act of kindness had not only changed the lives of others, but it had transformed her own. It wasn't just about what she could give to others. It was about the deep satisfaction that came from knowing she had made a difference. And every time she looked back at that moment in the restaurant, when she had paid for that family's meal, she knew it had been the catalyst for everything that had followed. Her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined, all because of a single, simple decision. And as she stood in front of a group of people one day, speaking about the power of kindness and empathy, she smiled, knowing that her journey was only just beginning. Sometimes it's the smallest acts that lead to the biggest changes. Emma's story serves as a powerful reminder that kindness is never wasted, and that even the smallest gesture can create a ripple effect that changes the world. And maybe, just maybe, that ripple will reach you too, if you're willing to take that first step